The metal chains felt cold against Lihana's wrists. She stood in the middle of a giant glass room that floated in space. Stars moved slowly outside the walls. She could see planets far away, small dots of light in the darkness. 5 alien creatures sat on tall chairs around her. They looked down at her like she was an insect. Their eyes glowed with different colors. Some had too many arms. Others had faces that changed shape when they talked. Hannah kept her back straight. She would not show fear. Not now, not ever. The biggest alien spoke first. His name was Vextar. His skin looked like green metal, and his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Human female Lihana, he said. You stand here because you broke the law. You refused to give us the location of Earth's weapons. You told other humans to fight against us. This caused many problems. Hannah said nothing. She remembered her brother, Park Jinwoo. He had died fighting these aliens when they came to their home planet. He had smiled at her before the battle. Stay strong, sister, he had said. Humans never give up. Another alien stood up. This one looked like a woman, but her skin was made of blue crystal. Light moved inside her body like water. Her name was Krylonth. The human caused the Terran defiance, Krylonth said. Her voice was like wind through glass. 17 human colonies joined her rebellion. They destroyed our ships. They killed our soldiers, all because of her words. Vextar nodded. Yes, she is dangerous. Too dangerous to live near other beings. Hannah finally spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. I told them the truth. You came to our worlds, saying you wanted peace. But you really wanted to make us slaves. Slaves. The third alien laughed. It sounded like metal, scraping metal. We wanted to help you. We wanted to make you better. By taking our weapons. By putting your soldiers on our planets. By making our children learn only your ways. Hannah shook her head. That is not help. That is conquest. The aliens looked at each other. They spoke in their own language for a moment. It sounded like music, mixed with the screams of dying animals. Vextar turned back to Hannah. You will not admit your crimes. You will not ask for mercy. This makes our choice easy. Krylonth stood up again. Hannah, we sentence you to exile on Mortis Prime. It is a death world. No technology, no weapons, no rescue. You will die there, alone. Hannah's heart beat faster, but she did not let it show on her face. She had heard stories about Mortis Prime. It was where the aliens sent their worst criminals. Most people died within hours of landing. The ones who lived longer became monsters. The creatures on that world have killed thousands, Vextar said. They are the galaxy's perfect killers. You are just a soft human. You will not last 3 days maybe, Hannah said. But I will try. The fifth alien, who had been quiet until now, made a sound like laughing. Try. Little human, the razorhounds will eat you before you find shelter. The shadow drakes will burn you to ash. The titan crabs will crush your bones. That world has no mercy. Hannah thought about her teacher, Kim Soren. The old woman had taught her many things before the aliens came. Listen to everything, Soren had said. Watch everything. Learn from everything. Humans survive not because we are strong, but because we can change. I understand, Hannah said to the aliens. You want me to die because you are afraid. Afraid? Vextar's eyes got brighter. Of what? Of what humans can do when we work together. Of what we can become when we refuse to give up. Krylonth waved her hand. Enough talk. Take her to the transport ship. 2 robot guards moved toward Hannah. They grabbed her arms. The metal of their hands was cold against her skin. They walked her out of the glass room and down a long hallway. The transport ship was small and dark. It had no windows. The robots pushed her into a tiny room and locked the door. She heard the engines start. The ship began to move. Hannah sat on the cold floor. She closed her eyes and remembered home. She remembered her brother's laugh. She remembered Soren's lessons. She remembered the faces of the people who had followed her into rebellion. They had known it might end this way. But they had fought anyway. Because some things were worth fighting for. Freedom was one of them. Hours passed, maybe days. It was hard to tell in the dark room. Sometimes the ship shook when it jumped through space. Sometimes she heard the robots talking in their electronic voices. Finally, the shaking stopped. The door opened with a loud hiss. Red light poured in. One of the robots spoke. Mortis Prime. Exit the ship. Hannah stood up slowly. Her legs were stiff from sitting so long. She walked to the door and looked outside. The world was red. The sky was red. The plants were red. Even the rocks were red, like they were covered in old blood. The air smelled like metal and death. Strange sounds came from the distance. Roars and screams and noises she had never heard before. The gravity felt heavy, like invisible hands pushing down on her shoulders. Move, the robot said. Hannah stepped out of the ship. The ground was soft under her feet, like walking on wet sand. The air was hard to breathe. It burned her throat a little. Behind her, the ship's engines started again. She turned and watched it fly away, getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the red sky. She was alone. The silence lasted only a moment. Then she heard it. A howl in the distance, then another. Then more, coming from different directions. They were hunting calls. The predators had smelled something new on their world. They had smelled her. Hannah looked around. There were tall plants everywhere, but they looked wrong. Their leaves were sharp like knives. Their trunks had holes that might hide dangerous things. Nothing looked safe. But she had to find shelter before dark, and she had to find water, and food, and figure out how to survive in a place designed to kill everything that lived there. She started walking toward a group of red trees. Each step was careful. Each breath was measured. She listened to every sound, watched every shadow dot behind her. More howls filled the air. They were getting closer. The hunt had begun. The red sun was setting. Hannah had been walking for hours. Her feet hurt, her throat was dry. The heavy gravity made every step feel like she was carrying rocks on her back. She found a small cave between two large red stones. It was not deep, but it would hide her from the wind. She gathered some dry leaves and small branches. The plants here felt strange. They were too smooth, like they were made of plastic instead of wood. Hannah sat down and tried to make a fire. She rubbed two sticks together, the way Kim Soren had taught her. It took a long time. Her hands got sore. But finally, a small flame appeared. The fire gave her light and warmth. For the first time since landing, she felt a little hope. Maybe she could survive here. Maybe the aliens were wrong. That was when she heard the footsteps. They were soft, like big cats walking. But there were too many of them. 6 legs per animal, maybe more. And they were coming from different directions. Hannah stayed very still. She made the fire smaller so it would not give away her exact location. Through the darkness, she saw eyes. They glowed yellow in the firelight. She counted them. 6 pairs, 12 eyes watching her. The creatures moved closer. Now she could see their shapes. They looked like dogs, but wrong. They had 6 legs instead of 4. Their fur was black like the night sky. Their claws looked like metal knives. When they moved, they seemed to fade in and out, like ghosts. Razorhounds. She remembered the aliens' words. These were the things that were supposed to eat her on the first day. The pack formed a circle around her cave. They moved slowly, carefully. They had done this many times before. Other prisoners had probably died in this exact spot. The biggest razorhound stepped forward. It was the leader. Its claws scraped against the stone as it walked. Its eyes never left Hannah's face. Most people would run. Most people would scream. Most people would try to fight. Hannah did something different. She sat perfectly still and watched the pack leader. She studied how it moved. She noticed that it favored its right front leg. She saw old scars on its face. She watched how the other pack members looked at it. This was not just a monster. This was a living thing with a life story. It had been hurt before. It had learned to be careful. It was the leader because the others trusted it to keep them safe. When the pack leader jumped at her, Hannah was ready. She did not try to run away. She did not try to fight it. Instead, she moved with it. She rolled to the side and let its weight carry it past her. The creature flew through the air and crashed into the stone wall behind her cave. The pack leader hit the wall hard. There were sharp crystal pieces growing from the stone. They cut into its side. The creature made a sound like a dog in pain. It tried to stand up, but the crystals had gone deep into its body. The other razorhounds snarled and moved closer. They thought Hannah had hurt their leader on purpose. They were ready to tear her apart. But Hannah was not looking at them. She was looking at their leader, bleeding on the ground. Slowly, very slowly, she moved toward the injured animal. The pack members growled warnings. Their claws scraped the stone. But she did not stop. "Easy," she said in a soft voice. "I am not going to hurt you." The pack leader's yellow eyes followed her. It was breathing fast. Blood was coming from the cuts on its side. It tried to stand again but fell down. Hannah knelt next to the creature. It could kill her with one bite. Its claws could cut her in half, but she reached out anyway. "Let me help," she whispered. She began to carefully pull the crystal pieces out of the creature's wounds. It was dangerous work. The razorhound could attack her at any moment. The other pack members were still watching, ready to strike. But Hannah had learned many things from Kim Soren. Her teacher had been a healer before the war. She had shown Hannah how to clean wounds, how to stop bleeding, how to help injured animals. Animals are like people, Soren had said. They remember kindness. They remember who helps them when they are hurt. One by one, Hannah removed the crystal pieces. She tore strips from her prison clothes to make bandages. She pressed them against the wounds to stop the bleeding. The razorhound watched her the whole time, but it did not try to bite her. When she was finished, the pack leader stood up carefully. It tested its weight on each leg. The wounds were not bleeding anymore. It would live. The creature looked at Hannah for a long moment. Then it did something that no prisoner had ever seen a razorhound do. It lowered its head. It bent its front legs. It lay down in front of her. The other pack members saw this and made confused sounds. Their leader had never done this before. In all their years of hunting, they had never seen submission to prey. But Hannah understood. This was not submission born from fear. This was respect. The pack leader was saying thank you in the only way it knew how. She reached out slowly and touched the creature's head. Its fur was softer than she had expected. The razorhound closed its eyes and made a sound like purring. The other pack members came closer. They sniffed at Hannah but did not threaten her. If their leader trusted her, they would trust her to Dot. As the night went on, the razorhounds lay down around Hannah's fire. They formed a protective circle. Any other predator that wanted to attack her would have to go through them first. Hannah fed small sticks to the fire and thought about what had happened. The aliens had sent her here to die. They expected the planet's killers to tear her apart. They thought humans were weak because they were not the biggest or strongest. They were wrong. Humans were not weak. They were different. They could see past the surface of things. They could find common ground with their enemies. They could turn predators into protectors with nothing but patience and kindness. The pack leader opened one yellow eye and looked at her. In that look, Hannah saw something the aliens would never understand. She saw friendship. When morning came, the razorhounds did not leave. They stayed with her as she explored the area around the cave. They showed her where to find water. They warned her about dangerous plants by growling when she got too close. Most importantly, they taught her their language. Not words, but body movements, ear positions, tail signals, ways to say friend and danger and follow me without making any sound. By the end of her second day on Mortis Prime, Hannah was not alone anymore. She had 6 deadly protectors who would die before letting anything hurt her. The aliens watching from their monitoring stations could not understand what they were seeing. Their instruments showed that the human was still alive. More than that, she was thriving. This had never happened before. High above in space, Vexstar received the report. He stared at the data for a long time. Impossible, he said. The Red kill everything. They have killed thousands of our prisoners. The data is correct, his assistant replied. The human has formed some kind of alliance with them. Vextar's green metal face showed no emotion, but inside he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Worry. If a soft human could tame Mortis Prime's killers in just 2 days, what else might she be capable of? He pushed the thought away. 1 pack of animals did not matter. The planet had hundreds of other predators. Bigger ones, smarter ones, deadlier ones. The human would die soon enough. She had to. 3 weeks had passed since Hannah first landed on Mortis Prime. The Razorhounds were her constant companions now. The pack leader, who she had named Bolt because of his speed, never left her side. But word was spreading through the Red Jungle. Something new was happening on the Deathworld. The usual sounds of fighting and killing had grown quieter. Other creatures were curious about the human who walked with the ghost dogs. Hannah was learning fast. Each day brought new challenges and new friends. The first came on a morning when thick mist covered the ground. Hannah could barely see her own hands. The Razorhounds were nervous. Their ears kept turning toward sounds she could not hear. Something was hunting them. Through the white fog, shapes moved like flowing water. They had no solid form. They were made of mist and shadows. Hannah had heard other prisoners scream about these things before they died. Mist stalkers, they could smell fear from miles away. Most people tried to run when the mist stalkers came, but running only made the creatures hungrier. They loved the chase. Hannah did something different. She sat down on the ground and became very still. She told the Razorhounds to do the same with hand signals. Then she watched. The mist stalkers moved in circles around them. They were trying to smell fear. But Hannah was not afraid. She was thinking. These creatures hunted by scent. They followed chemical trails in the air. Fear made a special smell. So did anger. So did pain. But what about other feelings? Hannah reached into her pack and pulled out some red berries she had found. She squeezed them between her fingers. The juice had a sweet smell, like flowers from earth. She rubbed the berry juice on her wrists and neck. Then she did something that must have looked crazy. She started to think happy thoughts. She remembered her brother's wedding day. She remembered summer mornings at home. She remembered her first kiss. Happiness made its own smell. It was different from fear, lighter, warmer. The mist stalkers stopped moving in circles. They came closer, but not to attack. They were confused. This strange creature smelled like joy. One of the mist stalkers took a solid form in front of Hannah. It looked like a tall, thin person made of white fog. It had no face, but she could sense it was curious. "Hello," Hannah said softly. "I am not your enemy." The creature tilted its head. It reached out with one misty hand and touched her forehead. For a moment, Hannah felt the creature's thoughts: hunger, loneliness, endless years of hunting and killing, because that was all it knew how to do. Hannah stood up slowly. She held out more berries. "Are you hungry for food? Or hungry for something else?" The mist stalker took the berries. It had no mouth, but the fruit disappeared into its misty body. For the first time in centuries, it tasted something that was not fear or death. More mist stalkers appeared. They formed a circle around Hannah, but not to trap her. They wanted to understand what she was. She shared her berries with all of them. She showed them how to find the sweet fruit on their own. When the mist cleared, the creatures did not leave. 3 of them stayed with Hannah's group. They could scout ahead and warn of dangers. They could move through places the Razorhounds could not go. Hannah's family was growing. The next challenge came from the sky. Hannah was washing in a small stream when she heard the roar. It was so loud that the water trembled. The Razorhounds ran for cover. Even the miststalkers tried to hide. A shadow drake landed on the other side of the stream. It was the size of a house. Its skin was black like space between stars. Its eyes glowed red like dying suns. This was one of the apex predators Vextar had warned her about. It could teleport from place to place. It could shoot fire from its mouth. It had ruled this part. of Mortis Prime for over 1,000 years. The Shadow Drake looked at Hannah like she was an annoying insect. Its name was Thokmar, though she did not know that yet. He had killed more prisoners than any other creature on the planet. Little soft thing, Thokmar spoke directly into her mind. His voice was like thunder. You have been changing my hunting grounds, making them ... quiet. This displeases me. Hannah felt the creature's power pressing down on her thoughts. One mental push, and her brain would turn to soup. But she did not try to run or fight. Instead, she looked at the great beast and saw something others had missed. Pain. The Shadow Drake was in constant pain. She could see it in the way he held his left wing, in the way he favored his right side, in the tight lines around his glowing eyes. You are hurt, Hannah said out loud. Thokmar roared in anger. I am the perfect killer. I know no pain. I fear nothing. But Hannah was already wading across the stream toward him. The Razorhounds tried to stop her. The Miststalkers whispered warnings. She ignored them all. When did it start? She asked the dragon. The pain in your wing. Thokmar could have killed her with a thought. Instead, he found himself answering. Centuries ago, a battle with my brother. The wound never healed right. Hannah nodded. She walked around the massive creature, studying him like Kim Soren had taught her to study injured animals. She saw the old break in the wing bone. She saw how the muscles had twisted to compensate. She saw the infection that had never fully healed. I can help, she said. Nothing can help, Thokmar replied. I have lived with this pain for so long, I thought it was part of being alive. Hannah began gathering plants from around the stream. Red moss that grew in the shade. Purple flowers that only bloomed at night. Roots that smelled like medicine. Kim Soren had taught her about these things. Not these exact plants, but the principles. How to recognize healing properties. How to make pain go away. How to clean old wounds so they could finally heal. She made a paste from the plants. She mixed it with clean water from the stream. Then she did something no one had ever dared to do. She touched a shadow drake. Thokmar's skin was hot like metal. In fire, but Hannah did not pull her hand away. She spread the plant paste over his infected wing joint. She worked it deep into the muscles. At first, nothing happened. Then Thokmar made a sound Hannah had never heard before. It was like a sigh, but deeper. The sound of pain leaving a body after centuries of residence. How? The great beast whispered. In her mind, my teacher showed me, Hannah replied. She said healing is not about being strong, it is about being patient, about listening to what the body needs. For the first time in 1,000 years, Thokmar moved his left wing without pain. He stretched it wide, testing the joint. It moved smoothly, like it had when he was young. The shadow drake looked down at the small human who had given him back something he thought was lost forever. Then he did something that shook the ground. He bowed not in defeat, not in fear, in respect. I am in your debt, small healer, Thokmar said. Ask anything of me. I ask for friendship, Hannah replied, nothing more. The great dragon considered this. In all his centuries of life, no one had ever asked for his friendship. They had begged for mercy. They had offered him treasure. They had promised him power. But friendship? You are strange, soft creature, Thokmar said, but I accept. Hi. Above in space, the alien monitoring stations recorded another impossible event. The Shadow Drake of the Eastern Territories had joined the humans' growing alliance. The apex predator that had terrorized Mortis Prime for a millennium was now protecting her. Vexstar stared at the reports with growing alarm. 3 weeks ago, he had sent one human to die on a world full of killers. Now that same human had an army of the galaxy's most dangerous predators following her like loyal pets. How many does she have now? He asked his assistant. 6 Razorhounds, 3 Miststalkers, and 1 Shadow Drake, came the reply. And sir, other creatures are starting to gather near her location. They seem ... curious. Vexstar's metal fingers drummed against his chair. This was not supposed to happen. Mortis Prime was designed to be survivable. The creatures there were programmed by evolution to kill everything they met. But somehow, this human had found a way to speak their language. Not with words, but with actions, with kindness, with healing. Keep watching, Vexstar ordered. She will make a mistake soon. The planet will claim her. But, even as he said it, he was no longer sure he believed it. On Mortis Prime, Hannah sat by her fire with her strange family around her. Bolt, the Razorhound, slept with his head on her lap. The Miststalkers drifted nearby like friendly ghosts. Thokmar perched on a high rock, his great wings spread wide and pain-free. For the first time since arriving on this world, Hannah smiled. She was not just surviving, she was building something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. A place where predators and prey could live in peace. 2 months had passed since Hannah first set foot on Mortis Prime. What started as a small group of unlikely friends had grown into something much bigger. Word spread fast in the Red Jungle. The human who healed instead of hurt. The soft creature who made the strong ones stronger. Animals that had been enemies for thousands of years were working together. Hannah's camp had moved to a large clearing near 3 streams. It was big enough for all her new friends. The Razorhounds had brought their mates and cubs. The Miststalkers had called their cousins from distant valleys. Thokmar was no longer alone. Other Shadowdrakes had come to see what all the noise was about. But the most amazing addition came from the deep caves. Hannah first heard about them from Bolt. The Razorhound had been scouting when he found huge tracks in the mud, footprints as big as dinner tables. Something massive lived in the mountain caves. Most creatures on Mortis Prime avoided those caves. The things that lived there were older than memory. Bigger than houses, angrier than storms. Titan crabs. The first one emerged on a morning when the red sun was hidden by clouds. It was the size of a building. Its shell was covered in spikes and scars. Its claws could cut through solid rock. Its name was Kresh, though it would be days before Hannah learned to pronounce it correctly. The giant crab moved slowly toward their camp. Every step shook the ground. Trees bent out of its way. The Razorhounds whimpered and hid. Even Thokmar seemed nervous, but Hannah walked out to meet it. "Hello, big friend," she called up to the creature. "What brings you so far from your caves?" Kresh looked down at her, with eyes like black pearls. When he spoke, his voice was like rocks, falling down a mountain, small one. "I have heard strange stories. They say you make the hunters stop hunting. They say you make the killers stop killing. I came to see if this is true." "It is true," Hannah replied. "But I do not make them stop. I show them they have choices." "Choices?" Kresh's massive claws clicked together. "What choices do I have? I am old, I am slow, I am in pain every day. My shell cracks more each year. My claws do not work like they used to. What choice is there but to be angry?" Hannah circled the giant crab, studying him. She had learned to see pain in many forms now. In Kresh, she saw the pain of age, of a body that was wearing out, of loneliness that came from being too big and scary for anyone to approach. "May I look at your shell?" she asked. Kresh was surprised. No one had ever asked to touch him before. They usually ran away, screaming. "Why?" "Because I think I can help." The giant crab lowered himself to the ground. Hannah climbed up onto his back. His shell was indeed cracked in many places. But worse than that, it was covered in small creatures, parasites that fed on his blood. They had been there so long that Kresh had forgotten what it felt like to be free of them. Hannah began to carefully remove the parasites. It was slow work. There were thousands of them, but she had help. The Miststalkers could reach into small cracks. The Razorhounds could use their claws to scrape away the stubborn ones. Even Thokmar used his fire breath to burn away the largest clusters. It took 3 days. When they were finished, Kresh's shell was clean for the first time in decades. The cracks had started to heal themselves. The giant crab felt lighter, stronger, younger. I had forgotten," Kresh whispered, "what it felt like to be clean. To be free." He looked at Hannah with new eyes. "You gave me back my dignity. How can I repay this?" "By being my friend," Hannah said. "By helping me show others that things can be different." Kresh considered this. He had spent centuries being angry at the world. But anger was just another kind of pain, wasn't it? And this small human had shown him how to heal pain. I will be your friend, the giant crab declared. And I will bring my family. Within a week, 12 more Titan crabs had joined them. The camp became a small city. The caves were expanded to house everyone. The streams were deepened to provide enough water, but most importantly, something amazing was happening. The natural order of Mortis Prime was changing. Creatures that had been mortal enemies for millions of years were sharing territory. Razorhounds and shadow drakes hunted together. Mist stalkers and titan crabs protected each other's young. Hannah had created something that had never existed before on any world. A true community of apex predators. The change was not just local. Reports came in from other parts of the planet. Territorial wars that had raged for centuries were ending. Predators were choosing negotiation over violence. Some were even sharing food with their former enemies. The alien monitoring stations could not explain what they were seeing. Violence on Mortis Prime had dropped by 90%. The death rate among exiled prisoners had fallen to almost zero. New arrivals were being adopted into communities. Instead of being eaten, the planet was becoming ... peaceful. Vexstar received the reports with growing panic. This was not possible. Mortis Prime was designed to be a Deathworld. Its creatures were the galaxy's perfect killers. They could not simply stop being killers, could they? Send more prisoners, he ordered his assistant. Dangerous ones, criminals who will disrupt this. Whatever this is, sir, we have no more prisoners scheduled for exile. The recent peace treaties have fined some, Vexter roared. Find criminals. Find rebels. Find anyone who might break up this human's little experiment. But even as he gave the order, Vexstar felt doubt creeping into his mind. What if this was not an experiment? What if this was just what humans did? What if they really could turn any situation to their advantage through cooperation and kindness? The thought terrified him. Meanwhile, on Mortis Prime, Hannah was making a discovery that would change everything. She was exploring a deep cave with Kresh when they found it. A chamber filled with strange crystals. But these were not ordinary crystals. They hummed with energy. They glowed with inner light. And when Hannah touched them, she could see things, other worlds, other dimensions. The crystals were windows into space itself. Thokma, she called through their mental link. Come quickly. I need to show you something. The shadow drake appeared in the cave with a sound like thunder. He looked at the crystals and his glowing eyes went wide. Dimensional stones, he whispered. I have heard legends, but I thought they were just stories. What do they do? Hannah asked. They can bend space, move things from one place to another. Shadow drakes use something similar for our teleportation, but these are much more powerful. Hannah studied the crystals carefully. An idea was forming in her mind. A dangerous, wonderful, impossible idea. Thokma, she said slowly. Could these stones move something as big as a planet? The dragon's eyes flared brighter. Theoretically, yes. But why would you want to? He stopped. Understanding dawned on his ancient face. You want to take Mortis Prime to them, he said. The aliens sent me here to die, Hannah replied. They think this planet is a prison. But what if it became something else? What if it became proof? Proof of what? Hannah smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned to fight back in ways her enemies could never expect. Proof that their way is not the only way. Proof that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Proof that they were wrong about everything. In the crystal's glow, surrounded by the galaxy's most dangerous predators, who now called her friend, Hannah, began to plan. The hunters were about to become the hunted. 3 months of work had led to this moment. Deep in the crystal caves, Hannah stood before a wall of glowing stones. Each crystal was bigger than her whole body. Together, they hummed with enough power to move worlds. Literally, thok, single quotes, Maya floated. Beside her, his mental voice excited. The calculations are complete. We can do it. We can move Mortis Prime through dimensional space. Around them, representatives from every species on the planet had gathered. Bolt and his Razorhound pack, the Flowing Mist Stalkers, Kresh and the other Titan Crabs, dozens of Shadow Drakes, even creatures that had only recently joined their growing family. They all understood the plan. They all agreed it was crazy. They all wanted to do it anyway. The aliens think they sent me here to die, Hannah said to the assembled creatures. They think this planet is their perfect prison. But prisons only work if the prisoners stay inside. She placed her hands on the largest crystal. It was warm to the touch and vibrated like a giant heart. Today, we show them they were wrong. About this world, about its creatures, about what happens when you underestimate humans. The crystal network activated with a sound like singing. Light poured through the caves. The very air seemed to bend and twist. Reality hiccuped, and Mortis Prime disappeared, far away in council space. Vexter was in the middle of a meeting when every alarm in the building started screaming. His assistant burst through the door, her crystalline face flickering with panic. "Sir, Mortis Prime. It's gone. Gone." Vexter stood up so fast his metal chair fell over. "What do you mean gone? The monitoring stations show empty space. No planet, no debris, no trace it was ever there." Vextar's green skin turned pale. "Run a full scan. Check for cloaking devices. Check for Sir." Another assistant ran in. "Long-range sensors are picking up a massive object entering our home system. It's Mortis Prime." For the first time in centuries, Vextar felt real fear. The red planet materialized in the heart of Council space, surrounded by the most heavily defended worlds in the galaxy. It should have been impossible. The gravitational forces alone should have torn apart every nearby star system, but somehow, impossibly, Mortis Prime settled into a stable orbit as gently as a leaf landing on water. That was when the broadcast began. Hannah's face appeared on every screen in Council space. She stood in what looked like a command center carved from red stone. Behind her, creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia stood like an honor guard. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm and clear. "My name is Lee Hannah. 3 months ago, your council sent me to die on a world they called a prison. They were wrong about many things." Vextar watched from his emergency bunker, surrounded by his most trusted advisors. His hands shook as Hannah continued speaking. "They were wrong about this planet. It is not a prison. It is a home for creatures that your council feared and abandoned. They were wrong about these creatures. They are not monsters. They are survivors, just like us." The camera pulled back to show the command center. Razorhounds worked alongside Shadow Drakes at control stations. Miststalkers flowed between dimensional equipment. Titan Crabs operated machinery with their massive claws. Most importantly, Hannah said they were wrong about what happens when you try to destroy something instead of understanding it. Gestured, and the screen split to show dozens of locations across Mortis Prime. What had once been a world of endless violence was now a thriving civilization. Former predators built homes together. Ancient enemies shared meals. Creatures that had never known peace were teaching their children to play instead of fight. For thousands of years, your council has solved problems by making them disappear. Dangerous species? Exile them. Rebellious populations? Scatter them. Anyone who questions your authority, send them away to die. The screen changed again. Now it showed data. Streams of information that made several council members gasp in horror. "But we know your secrets now," Hannah continued. "We found your hidden records. The species you claimed were too violent to coexist with others. The planets you said were destroyed by natural disasters. The entire civilizations that simply vanished from your history books." Vextar felt his world crumbling around him. Those records were supposed to be sealed forever. How had she found them? "Every creature on this planet has a story," Hannah said. Their homeworld was destroyed because they refused to give you their phasing technology. The Shadow Drakes exiled because their telepathic abilities made you nervous. The Titan Crabs banished because their long lives made them inconvenient. witnesses to your crimes. She stepped closer to the camera. Her eyes were no longer those of a helpless prisoner. They burned with the fire of someone who had found her purpose. You sent us here to die because you thought death was the end of the story. But death is only the end if you let it be. We chose to live, we chose to grow, we chose to become something better than what you made us. Around the galaxy, beings who had been silent for centuries began to speak. Species that had been told their missing members died in accidents started asking questions. Worlds that had accepted the Council's version of history began demanding proof. The age of ruling through fear is over, Hannah declared. We offer you a choice. The same choice we offered every creature on this world. You can continue fighting, or you can learn to live in peace. Vexstar wanted to order an attack. He had enough firepower in the home system to crack planets. But something stopped him. Perhaps it was the sight of creatures that should have been killing each other, working together in perfect harmony. Perhaps it was the data that proved decades of Council lies. Or perhaps it was the simple fact that this human had done something he thought was impossible. She had taken the galaxy's most perfect killers and turned them into a family. If you choose peace, Hannah continued, we will share what we have learned, how to heal old wounds, how to turn enemies into allies, how to build something lasting. Instead of just tearing things down, she paused, and her expression softened slightly. But if you choose war, the camera pulled back to show the full command center. Thousands of the galaxy's apex predators, all looking directly at the screen, all ready to fight if they had to. Well, you created us. You know what we are capable of. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the council chamber was completely silent. Then everyone started talking at once. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiations. A few quietly began making plans to disappear before their own crimes came. Too light, but Vexstar just stared at the blank screen. In trying to destroy one stubborn human, he had created something far more dangerous than any rebellion. He had created hope. And hope, once born, was almost impossible to kill. On Mortis Prime, Hannah walked out onto a balcony carved from red stone. Below her, the city that had grown from her small camp bustled with life. Razorhound cubs played with young shadow drakes. Mist stalkers taught titan crabs how to move quietly. Former enemies had become neighbors, friends, family. Bolt appeared beside her, now wearing a communication device that let him speak in words instead of just thoughts. What happens now? He asked. Hannah smiled and scratched behind his ears. Now, we wait and see what they choose. But, whatever happens, we have already won. How do you figure that? Because we proved something important. We proved that there is always another way. No matter how impossible things seem, no matter how hopeless the situation looks, there is always a choice to be better. High above them, ships began to appear. Not the sleek war vessels of the Council, but the battered transports of refugees and exiles. Beings from across the galaxy who had heard Hannah's message and decided they wanted to be part of something new. The Exodus had begun, and Mortis Prime, the world that was supposed to be the end of hope, had become its beginning. As the red sun set over her adopted world, Hannah thought about her brother Jinwoo and her teacher Kim Soren. They would have been proud. She had not just survived the impossible. She had transformed it. The apex predators had not bowed to her strength. They had bowed to her vision of what they could become together, and in the end, that made all the difference.